Hi all, Unready here, and today I'll be playing some more Total War Warhammer 3 while going over a rather interesting video which came out recently. Now, if you've been watching the video essayist space for the last few years, you must have heard of the name Shaun. Shaun is one of the titans of the leftist video essayist genre, alongside greats such as H-Bomber and ContraPoints, and he recently put out another video simply titled Palestine. Now, originally, I was going to review this video point by point and go over anything that I disagreed with. But as I was writing the script, I realised two things. First, the video was pretty mid overall, and I was just, well, bored. But two, I realised something fascinating while doing research for the script. And that is, dear viewer, what Shaun didn't put in the video is far more interesting than what he did put in there, which puts a whole new light on the video once you know the context. So this is what we'll be discussing today. I'm not going to go into too much detail regarding the content of Shaun's Palestine video, so I've linked that in the description, watch it below if you haven't seen it yet. So to understand this properly, we have to step into a time machine. A Twitter time machine. Let's venture back to the year 2020. Biden and Trump are squaring off against each other in the 2020 election in the United States of America. And Shaun is not happy about this. Well, specifically, as this tweet suggests, he's not a tremendous fan of Biden in particular. But this kind of rhetoric can be dangerous, so close to an election, as even if a few people stay home as a result of it, it may be enough to tip the election one way or the other. And Shaun has enough reach to be able to have this effect too, with his 681,000 followers and millions of views on his videos. Fortunately, in hindsight, it didn't happen this way, but it very well could have. Shaun's follow-up tweets around this time weren't much better. The next day after the Iraq tweet, he tweeted this. This references an incident in 2019 where Biden told an immigration activist who was expressing issues with him in a town hall meeting to go vote for Trump. So again, Shaun is just echoing the same sentiment as his previous tweet. He then takes another stab at Biden and Democrats generally here, by implying that they aren't good as they are only not Republicans and don't do anything else at all to make themselves good, which is kind of weird. He then keeps going on this thread post-2020 election, saying that no one should be allowed to celebrate Biden's victory, and here that people celebrating Biden coming in give him bad vibes, and then goes on to allude to since debunked allegations of sexual assault against Biden. Now, Biden isn't the only world leader that Shaun has taken shots at. He also said something similar about the Labour Party in his own country and about Macron in France. So why is Shaun saying any of this? Surely he is intelligent enough to realise that this is counterproductive at best and flirting with disaster at worst. The answer to this question is a little concept called accelerationism. So accelerationism in this context is related to leftism and socialism. Basically, some quite extreme leftists believe that if we keep electing centre-left neoliberal candidates like Biden, Macron and Labour in the UK, that these parties and politicians will keep things relatively stable. They'll make some incremental good changes and some incremental bad changes, but overall things will remain the same. This means that people will not embrace socialism and carry on with the traditional capitalist order, which is a huge issue if you're a socialist. So the accelerationists believe that if we elect candidates like Trump, that he will make things so bad for the average person that they will revolt against him and form a new glorious socialist state. In a nutshell, accelerationism is the idea that to make things better, we first have to make them a lot worse. But this concept is extremely flawed for a few reasons, the most obvious of which is that people like Trump will not be overthrown so easily, as they will have the entire US military and security apparatus at their fingertips to resist any revolutionary activity. I mean, there's a good reason we point and laugh at those redneck militia types in the US who think that a couple of good old boys with AR-15s can defeat the US military. Additionally, there is no unified leftist movement who could perform such a revolt. Instead, what is likely to happen is that someone like Trump would get power, absolutely destroy democracy, and become a dictator whilst arresting any opposition to his rule. So yeah, accelerationism is just a really terrible option, and Shaun should know better than to flirt with it so publicly. But this is not the end of our look through Shaun's Twitter timeline, as recently he has kicked his flirtation with acceleration up a notch and really dialed up how extreme his rhetoric is. So Shaun is really not in favour of Biden's handling of Israel-Palestine. Apparently, the root of his dislike for Biden here is that Shaun believes Biden could just end all hostilities in Gaza, and I quote, with a phone call. He has expressed this sentiment in multiple tweets, and has also implied that people who support Biden's handling of Israel-Palestine are husk people who treat human life as sport, which is, again, a bit weird, honestly. So that concludes our look at Shaun's Twitter, in which we can see that Shaun has some very extreme opinions on the issue of Biden generally, and Israel-Palestine more specifically. This is why his latest Israel-Palestine video is so odd and focuses more on poetry and short stories than on actual facts and figures like Shaun normally does in his videos. And this was because Shaun was at war with himself while writing this video. He no doubt wanted to rant about how awful Biden was at length, and make all kinds of crazy suggestions like he does on Twitter. But he was also worried that these ideas might be a little unpopular amongst his viewers. So he had three realistic options for how I could address this. Either he could make the video and include his views on Biden even if they are unpopular, not make the video at all, or the third option, which he actually went with, which is to do both of these things at the same time. In the end, Shaun made a video in which he briefly mentions his hatred of Biden, but also didn't really say much else of note about the conflict in Israel and Palestine, which explains why his video is the way it is. Yeah, overall the video was pretty mild for that reason, at least compared to Shaun's Twitter opinions, but it was no less stupid. Let's see what made it in. Take it away, Shaun.
Has, when they've come into conflict, ranked its own interests above Israel's. There have been times in the past when Israeli aggression towards the Palestinians or its neighbours has been halted by an order from the US president, using all that leverage they have. This could be for a few reasons: the conscience of the president, or more likely either domestic political concerns or a more far-sighted view of foreign policy than the politicians running Israel have. The US is typically happy to support Israel in its ethnic cleansing campaign, they'd just prefer it happen quietly and less embarrassingly. Maybe they also realise that without someone to step in and tell them no every now and then, Israel will self-destruct in a spiral of genocidal hatred. Unfortunately, Joe Biden is one of the worst people on the planet to be the American president right at this moment, with his seemingly infinite patience for spirals of genocidal hatred and his inability to remember things. Back in the 80s, when even Republican President Ronald Reagan ordered Israel to stop bombing Lebanon, a younger Joe Biden reportedly said he would go even further than Israel, even to the point of stating he supported killing women and children. Biden's position was so extreme that even the then Israeli Prime Minister distanced himself from Biden's comments.
Okay, let's pause there for a second. I just gotta check my calendar, as unless I hit my head really hard at some point, I could have sworn that it was 2024 and not 1980. So unless Biden's opinion hasn't changed, which, spoiler, I think it has, this is a complete non sequitur which has nothing to do with the current situation. I just assume that this is here because Shaun needed to get his digs in at Biden somehow. So how was Biden better on Israel than, say, Trump? Well, let's look to last year as an example. Late last year, after the October 7th attacks, Israel was looking to broaden its war against Hezbollah in Lebanon. In response, the Biden administration moved the USS Gerald R. Ford aircraft carrier and its strike group of naval vessels into the eastern Mediterranean. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said that this was part of the US's effort to deter hostile actions against Israel or any efforts towards widening this war following Hamas's attack on Israel. I think that this was a good move to prevent more hostilities from spilling out into the wider region. Now, I will fully admit that Biden isn't perfect on Israel. He is far too supportive of them for my liking, and he could leverage his position more through things like sanctions and cutting off military aid. But I don't think Shaun's criticism of him is remotely fair or reasonable, considering that he thinks the whole conflict can be solved with a phone call. But Biden is still better than the alternative. Trump has an awful track record in this area, famously recognizing Jerusalem as the Israeli capital in 2017 and ordering the US embassy to be moved there. This was a move that inflamed tensions throughout the region, as Jerusalem is a hotly contested city due to its religious significance to Jews, Muslims, and Christians. Now, Trump's bad policy regarding Israel isn't just a thing of the past. He has indicated that his future policies will be just as awful. For example, the New York Times reported that Trump wants to let it play out in regards to the conflict. His main advice to Israel was to do better at public relations, as the Palestinians were beating them. So if you care about Palestine, surely you must recognise that Biden, while he's not perfect, is a much better option than Trump, who just wants to sit back and let Israel go nuts, essentially. So let's see what Shaun has said about this. Maybe he's changed his opinion. Maybe I'm being too harsh on the guy. Oh no. Yeah, why doesn't that surprise me? This kind of rhetoric is misinformed and extremely counterproductive. This is for reasons that I've discussed previously in regards to the stupidity of accelerationism as an ideology, but also in terms of Israel-Palestine more specifically. If we assess both Biden and Trump on the issue, Biden is far better than Trump, as we've concluded from above. Because even if we acknowledge that he doesn't do enough, he is at least doing something, which is much better than what Trump is planning to do. So surely it stands to reason that if you care about the Palestinian people, you should encourage people to vote Biden, at least until a better option comes along. And for US domestic politics, Biden is better than Trump in every way, economically and particularly socially. A new Trump presidency is also concerning for the very future of American democracy, as Trump's advisors are working on a strategy they call Project 2025 for the next election. This involves plans to limit the free press and give as much power as possible to Trump as the president in his next term. So basically, if he gets in, there may not be another election, as America may not be a democracy once he's done with it. Which is terrible for everyone living there, especially for those such as LGBT people and ethnic minorities who will be targeted especially hard under a new Trump presidency. It is worth noting that Shaun is from the UK and would not have to live with the consequences of his own actions and words on Twitter, which makes his rhetoric even more disgusting here. Overall, I feel that Shaun's opinions are short-sighted and self-destructive. We can see more context to his anti-Biden rhetoric through his Twitter, which led to Shaun creating a video where he was wrestling with himself about what content to include, creating quite a bland video with a twinge of anti-Biden in there. What I can't understand is how Shaun doesn't realise that demonising Biden in this way will only encourage more people to vote for Trump or just not vote at all, which will let the votes for Trump mean proportionally more in the 2024 elections, which will be to the detriment of Palestinians, Americans, and the world in general. So would Biden be the lesser of two evils in this case? I know people are sick of this lesser of two evils perspective, but unfortunately it is a reality. In reality, politics is not a zero-sum game where you win once and then win at everything forever. Politics is struggle. It's about making hard choices with no perfect answer. And to ignore this reality is to give in to would-be authoritarians like Trump and give them all the power by picking up your ball and going home. Anyways, thanks for watching everyone. I hope I've given you something to think about, and I will see you next time.